So Phase 5 of the MCU came to a close recently, and it was incredibly hit and miss. There is absolutely fantastic media that is some of the MCU's best, but there's just as much that is up there in their worst. After the utter disaster that was Phase 4, this had to deal with all of those leftovers, making this phase the best and worst of the MCU. Today, we are going to analyze this phase of the MCU, the good, the bad, and the ugly of the most hit and miss phase of the MCU by far. Now, of course, I'm not going to talk about everything, like I will not go over the animated shows. While yes, there are ones that are MCU canon, those don't have any real connections to this matter of the video. But enough rambling, let's get into Phase 5 of the MCU. So, the good. Now, despite how much people may dunk on this phase, this is not the worst phase of the MCU. It is not worse than Phase 4, it's not even close. It's very similar to early phases of the MCU. The highs were high, but the lows were really low. I think a lot of the good here is some of the best we have seen since the Infinity Saga. Not to the point where it's better than Endgame, as a lot of people say, but it gives us good stories that work really well. After Phase 4, it was nice to see the MCU return to its roots with the good they did with this phase, giving us stories that are really compelling, but also ones that feed into the narrative and also ones that feel very standalone. But let's get into the good, starting off with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. This is quite easily the best film and probably best project of Phase 5 despite its problems. Ending the trilogy in a satisfying way, elements here honestly made the first two films 10 times better. Now, for context, Guardians of the Galaxy is my favorite thing in the MCU ever. I love these characters, I love this world. So, when we get to witness what they go through here, it feels conclusive. What they did with Rocket is some of the best character development in the MCU. This film made Rocket a top 2 character, showing us his trauma was brilliant, whether it was losing his friends or torture. When Rocket almost died and Quill loses it, Chris Pratt killed it. I know a lot of people hate Chris Pratt, but his scene here just shows he can act, man. Speaking of Chris Pratt, I absolutely love what he did with Star-Lord. They gave him a really nice arc. He is still grieving after the death of Gamora, and I love that James Gunn didn't make them get back together. It would have been so predictable, instead he learns to move on from it. He even goes back to Earth to prove it. It was a great arc that ended his character satisfyingly. Even the villain is absolutely incredible. The High Evolutionary played by Myrn from Peacemaker, he crushed it. There are villains we can sympathize with, but then there are villains we just hate. And this is one of those. Because every time he does anything, I just want to get Rocket out of there. Once the film ends, we see the Guardians go their separate ways. It is so heartbreaking, but at the same time, it is so heartfelt seeing all these characters and how far they have come. Now hearing Groot talk and we understand besides just the team, Drax has become the protector of nowhere since he was born to be a dad, not a destroyer. Mantis goes her separate ways, Rocket is leading the Guardians, Nebula is leading the city, and Quill goes back to Earth. It is just so well done. When it ends playing Dog Days Are Over, it is so emotional, not only because it's a great song, but also seeing a montage of where these characters are going. It is so sentimental, ending the film in the best way it could have. However, this film is far from perfect. Some of the humor can be really overdone. Adam Warlock was an extreme disappointment, not to mention a lot of the characters that don't really belong, like the Sovereign, just didn't need to be there. But overall, this film works more often than it does not. After Guardians of the Galaxy 3, the next best MCU project was Loki Season 2. This show is easily the best MCU show, even though the bar is seriously low. This is a rare case where their 6-episode format actually works. Now, I know this show isn't for everyone, this is a slow burn. It reminds me of Andor, a slow show that takes its time, but tells a great story with so much depth within the Marvel Universe. The first season of Loki was also great. Both seasons are not perfect. Both can have slow pacing, absolutely. But the characters, the world building, music, cinematography, direction, and writing, all of it is just the MCU's best. Just like how Guardians of the Galaxy made Rocket one of the best MCU characters, this show made Loki the best MCU character. He went from a guy who wanted the throne of Asgard but failed, but now he has the throne to protect the world. His arc alone makes this so timeless and worth it. Then Deadpool and Wolverine release. Now, as I expected, many people have turned on this film, but I still think this film is really good. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Upon rewatch, I was wondering how I would feel after, and I do think some things didn't age too well, but man, this film was a really entertaining watch. Is it a nostalgia bait cameo fest? Yes, there's simply no denying that. But does that make this film bad? No, it doesn't. Some absolutely do not work, but overall the cameos, if we even call them that, progress the plot. Even my least favorite one, the Henry Cavill one, still makes sense, as it was done to show Deadpool looking for the right Wolverine. But outside of that, this film does what you want from a Deadpool movie. It gives you an entertaining story, but also with a lot of heart. It's what made the past films work so well. If it didn't have that heart alongside the humor, we wouldn't care as much. One thing I don't see a lot of people talk about is Deadpool's arc in this film. He goes from wanting to be an Avenger, not because he wants to, but because he needs to. He becomes a hero willing to sacrifice himself. Even outside of this film, when we look at where he started, it shows so much growth. Bringing back Hugh Jackman was also a huge risk, but one that I don't think was entirely wrong. I still prefer Logan any day of the week, but giving them the funny straight man duo was genius. In its simplest form, this film is just a fun body cop film, which is awesome. Now, as I said, this film isn't perfect. It has many issues, its pacing is lightning quick, and I remember when I first saw it, and I was just blown away by how quick it went. The villains are pretty generic, and the story isn't anything mind-blowing, but what it gets right is enough to make it a fun watch.
You know how long I've been waiting for this? Woo, I'm about to make a name for myself here.
The final project in the good of Phase 5 is Thunderbolts. One of the biggest surprises of the year for me so far. Giving a story layer in complexity, but with a deep message that spoke to me. I made a whole video analyzing Thunderbolts, so if you want to see me go deeper, go check it out. But Thunderbolts was able to tell a story with so much depth and mystery that made it such a ride. Giving us a look at old and new characters in such a different way, Yelena is honestly now one of my favorite MCU characters of all time. I appreciate John Walker more. Sentry is literally the new me character, and a lot of the other characters work nicely, even though some are underused, like Ghost, but if anything, that's what holds the film up. The interesting complexity of these characters is what makes the film. The only problem with this film is that, well, it didn't perform well. Now, I said it before, I do not care about money, I just want a good story, and I got that here. But if we are going to talk about the problems in Phase 5, this needs to be mentioned. As if you make a good film and it doesn't do well, that's a problem. The film made $378 million at the box office and needed to make $450 million to break even, leading to this film underperforming. It also has really slow pacing and a few other small issues, but overall, this is one of the most deep and emotional MCU films I've seen in a long time. The good in Phase 5 is some really great stuff. Not perfect by any means, but it shows just how much this saga can get right. It gives you enough to think the MCU is getting back on track. But there are large issues among all the good. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of this video. Now, when Phase 4 ended, my optimism with the MCU was at an all-time low. Yes, there was some good, but there was a lot of crap too. You know the people that say Marvel fatigue? Well, that is how I felt with Marvel in 2023, which as someone who has loved this series since my childhood, I didn't think was possible. Yet I was just so uninterested in so many things. So to say my excitement for this phase was at an all-time low would be an understatement. The film side of Phase 5 could not have started off worse with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I gotta say, this rewatch was so difficult. I watched every Phase 5 project besides a few, and I gotta say, this one is really rough. I remember watching the trailer when it first dropped, and I thought it looked decent. But it was really the second trailer that showed many red flags, then the reviews came in and I was proven right. This was the first MCU film I actually hadn't seen in theaters since I was a kid. It is one of the most dull and awful MCU films you will ever witness. This film was supposed to be what fixed the MCU, yet it really sent it into an even worse direction if anything. The introduction of the next Thanos, yet this film is so bad I legit don't understand what Marvel were thinking. Marvel thought they actually had a banger on their hands with this one, so that alone is deeply concerning. Quantumania went way too high in its ambitions. It felt like Peyton Reed literally wanted to make an Avengers film but had no idea how to. I actually told my friend after this when I saw it on Disney Plus, I said this film feels like Marvel gave $300 million to a bunch of kindergartners and let them make the movie. This film treats its audience like they are 5 years old. The dialogue is laughably bad. The fact the writer on this almost did one of the Avengers films was more scary than an actual horror film. The VFX is laughably bad and pure CGI noise. Like MODOK, I don't care if this is comic accurate, it still looks awful. The characters as well, overall, just don't work. Scott is fine, not any real issues with him, it's just Paul Rudd having a blast. Then Janet was supposed to be like this central plot, but every time she tries to tell her past, there's just something that gets in the way of it, and it's so annoying. Heck, Michael Douglas feels like he was just there out of contractual obligations. He even said in interviews he would only come back for another Ant-Man film if his character died, and now he is retired. His final film is Quantumania. That is just insane to me. But the character that absolutely did not work for me was Cassie. Now, before I go any further, I want to say I love Catherine Noonan. She always makes a film a little bit better for me because she just has so much personality. That being said, this was one of the rare times where she just did not work at all. I think she was a total miscast for this character. They don't really choose a specific motive. Like, one point she is just this in and out of jail type like her dad, but then she is a genius. Like, the writing around this character is just awful. The only shining light in this film was Kang. But even then, his power level was so poorly done because he was defeated by Ant-Man. Out of everyone. Like, explain to me how this dude is supposed to be threatening, but he can't even be beaten by Ant-Man. It's so stupid. Kevin Feige actually said they were planning on getting rid of Kang from the beginning, which I'm gonna be honest, if you believe this, you are way too gullible. But even if this is true, which it isn't, that just makes it 10 times worse. This film failed to grab audiences' attention. After a load of reshoots, the budget cost close to $300 million, and the film only made $470 million worldwide, making this the first MCU film that didn't make its money back. But overall, this film was just a bad start to Phase 5 of the MCU. Now, you would think that after this, things could not get worse, right? Wrong. As then we got Secret Invasion. This show is a disaster on every conceivable level. The thing is though, I never even finished it. Even on my rewatch, I still have not finished this garbage show. I don't know why people say this show started strong, because even at the beginning, it's just boring. It's one of those Marvel shows that you can tell was clearly meant to be a movie. It was really when Maria Hill died and how boring episode 2 got, I just knew this show was gonna be awful, and I was not wrong. Now I know some of you may be thinking, why am I even discussing this if I haven't finished it? Well, I have seen clips and I have done research on what has happened, why Gaia became the most powerful being in the MCU, which is incredibly stupid for so many reasons, even killing different key players like Talos. So I'm not going to analyze this like crazy as, like I said, I never finished it. I would be lying if I said I knew everything because I don't. What I can say is, from the start, it just isn't good. It's boring, it drags. I even asked some friends their thoughts on this show, and one of them said, it's a piece of shit dog shit that wasted my time. Word for word. The research as well just makes this show sound awful, and easily the worst MCU show to date. After Secret Invasion, the next bad omen was The Marvels. Oh boy, this film was something, I'll tell ya. Now, before I get into how I felt after the rewatch, I want to say how I felt before. I have never been crazy about this film. It's just a boring film. I thought of it similar to Thor: The Dark World, but as time went on and after this rewatch, I realized how much worse it is than I originally thought. Now that I have grown older and after this rewatch, I have to say I think this is easily my least favorite MCU film. I will go as far as say I actually hate this film. Everything about this film, besides a few minor details, is just awful. It's a film that is so dull, I genuinely can't remember what happened. I watched the film a few days ago, and I can't remember what happened. I actually talked to my buddy about this, and he said that this film feels like it skipped an act. It is so true. There's absolutely zero plot here. There's nothing to keep you invested in this story. I just gave a rant on Quantumania, but at least that is a more memorable story. The director Nia DaCosta actually said this film was meant to be shorter, and I think that was a mistake because it just shows that this film was doomed to fail. Even with the runtime, it drags like crazy. I mentioned this even with my positives of Phase 5, that the pacing can be off, but I would much rather deal with a quick-paced film or a slow-paced film than one like this. Even though it's the shortest MCU film, it feels like the longest. The characters also overall do not work. They tried to make Captain Marvel more likable, but she was just let down in the writing again. Monica Rambeau is okay. I never liked this character, even in WandaVision, and the villain is easily the worst MCU villain I've ever seen. Nick Fury being here also just feels like tonal whiplash after Secret Invasion. It just doesn't add up given the tone of the last project. Speaking of the tone of this film is insanely goofy, which isn't inherently a bad thing, but there was zero balance. I cannot believe that there was a segment where everyone communicated in song. It was the definition of cringe, and I cannot believe it even happened. I know some people are gonna go, oh, he hates it because he hates women, blah blah blah. Which, if that is an excuse towards any film, that is such a stupid criticism. Madam Web stars woman. It sucks because it's poorly written. The same goes for the Marvels. It's a poorly written and rushed film in general. Now, Kamala Khan is easily the best part of this film. There is a certain likability to this character, and even the chemistry between the three is really good, but this film, from start to finish, is an awful, dull mess. Clearly, I am not the only one who thought this, as critics and audiences weren't pleased, and it barely cracked $200 million worldwide, making this the biggest MCU bomb to date. The bad of Phase 5 was truly awful. The writing around these projects is just terrible, the characters feel lifeless, but most importantly, they just feel like rushed video game cutscenes. But we are not done yet, there is still more to come. So let's get into the ugly of Phase 5, the parts that weren't bad, but not good either. These are projects in between everything and how the MCU was done over the course of this phase. At this point, the MCU had just lost its mind. One of the things that held past phases together was its narrative. But thanks to Phase 4, this both had it and didn't at the same time. So because of that, we had some projects that just made zero sense. Not like Phase 5 didn't do some overall setup for its narrative, like Loki did that very well. But because Kang isn't used anymore, Quantumania is just pointless. And even outside of that, because of Marvel being forced to make a bunch of content for Disney+, they were in a bad position, leading to us getting some stuff that just was not needed at all. Starting off with Echo. So, for context, when Hawkeye came out, I thought this character was just dead boring. So when they announced this show, I literally rolled my eyes, but then it came out and it is just mid at best. I could call it worse, but I'm gonna be nice for once. What I find hilarious is that Marvel promoted this film like it was gonna be Marvel's darkest project yet, but this show is not dark or bloody. This show has a TVMA rating, yet it feels like a TV-14 show. It is like Marvel did a few reshoots and added blood and gave up. The show starts off with a recap, which I do find a bit odd because this could have just been something they put on like a quick recap on, like a previous on episode type deal, then moved on. But no, they decided to do this, which I thought was really weird to do. Now, it was cool seeing Maya's heritage, but her powers are just stupid. Not to mention, I still have no interest in this character even after this show. The only real bright side were the scenes with Daredevil and Kingpin, seeing Maya's past with him and how they treat each other. But I gotta be honest, the Daredevil fight was just fine. It was okay. Overall, Echo has some things going for it, and it's far from bad, it's just forgettable. Since we are on the topic of random side characters getting their own shows, let's talk about Agatha All Along. This show is an okay, enjoyable, fun show. That is really it. It's fine, but you forget about it the moment the credits end. I do appreciate that it actually has long episodes, the production design is incredible, the Halloween type aesthetic is also really cool. Not to mention, they gave Agatha a lot more depth, and I really enjoyed her as much as I did in WandaVision. At times, it truly does feel like they brought back that WandaVision magic. I love how episodic it feels and tonally distinct from past projects, and at least it has 9 episodes besides 6. So at least there's that. But this show has so many issues. Some of the characters are honestly dead boring, specifically Tommy, who is Wanda's son. Like, I cannot give a single shit about this character. He is such an annoying side character. Not just him, but all of Agatha's friends. I can barely remember their names. The story is pretty basic and the character arcs feel forced. It relies on past information to make us care and it just doesn't work. Like, when one character dies, I just didn't care and that says it all really. Agatha is a definition of take it or leave it. It's not a show that's hard to understand the overall story of the MCU, but you can absolutely skip it. After Agatha, we had Captain America: Brave New World. This film was frankly doomed from the start. For those that do not know, this film was literally plagued with the rewrites and reshoots. Like, Giancarlo Esposito's character was brought in because of it. Even Matthew Oren did a rewrite, all because of bad test screenings. This was not just a bad production, it was a disaster at its finest. Critics were really harsh on it. It made a collective $415 million at the global box office. This film barely broke even. Kevin Feige even said it failed because it wasn't Chris Evans. No, Kev, your film just wasn't good. The fact we haven't even seen Sam Wilson since 2021 is just not right. In the early phases, we saw our faces of the MCU regularly. Tony Stark was making so many cameos and Steve had a big role too. But Marvel has struggled with their new faces. It seems like Sam would be that, but apparently not. But what are my thoughts on this film? It's fine, I guess. It's just a big old nothing burger you forget the moment you leave the cinema. Being totally honest, the more marketing we got, the less excited I became. The reception didn't help either. If my sister was not having a bachelor party for her wedding, I would not have seen this. The way it's shot too, in general, it's just not great. The director, Julia Anao, didn't really do his best job here. You know how people complain about The Flash's awful CGI? Well, think of that, but for green screen. The budget is getting real low and you can tell they're on the volume set. Sam Wilson's character development is also just a regression. It's the exact same journey he went through on Falcon and Winter Soldier. Sam Wilson struggles to accept who he is as Captain America. Yeah, we saw it before, just this time the social commentary wasn't as bad as it was there. It's paper thin and lazy at best.
You've got to do better, Senator.
What about the other characters? They're just not great. I absolutely hate that there are so many Hulk characters in this film, thanks to Marvel not having the full rights to Hulk. Harrison Ford is clearly having a blast here and he is a bright spot in this film, but the leader, absolutely terrible. On the plus side, the action was great and worked so well, but this film is just a mess from start to finish. You can tell where this film was reshot, the script is a mess and is ultimately a disappointment for Sam Wilson's Captain America. The final MCU project we had was Daredevil Born Again. I made a full video just like I did with Thunderbolts, but to give you my quick thoughts on this show, it was a disappointment for me. It fails to live up to what made the Netflix show special, but just like Brave New World, the production was awful. They had to switch up from a Disney-fied version and try to make it a real Daredevil show with an overhaul. What they should have done was reshot the show from scratch, because with the old footage, this show felt like a lot of half-baked ideas, but absolutely none of them come together to make a cohesive narrative. But towards the end, it for sure picks up. You really see what made the Netflix show so special. So I would not mind a second season because of that, but the characters replacing Karen and Foggy, I can barely remember the names. I think one of them was named Heather, that's a guess, I really don't know. Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio killed it as always. They make the show good. What we get with Jon Bernthal is also just amazing. But this show was just a mess because of its pre-overhaul material. Towards the beginning, it stumbles in every way. They wasted Muse, which is a crime. But then towards the end, it picks up. Whether it was worth it or not, we will have to wait till next year to find out. We also got other projects like Ironheart that were just there, which is, oh, I'm gonna be honest, I don't give a shit about Ironheart. I never liked this character and I heard this show was meh anyway. What's coming up for sure feels a lot more inviting than whatever this was. We recently got a look at Brand New Day and it actually looks really good. Then Doomsday, which I am still skeptical about, but I hope it can surprise me. Then there are things like Vision Quest, because why not? This phase was just not a good position at all. It had to deal with the wasted time of Phase 4, starting off with an absolute whimper in Ant-Man the Lost Quantumania. Then we had some peak in Guardians of the Galaxy, and stuff like Brave New World that are all in between, all because of what happened during Phase 4 of the MCU. Phase 5 is a very hit and miss phase. The good is absolutely some of the best we have seen in the MCU. The bad is seriously awful. And then some stuff in between is just mid or messy projects in general. Although it isn't the worst Marvel phase, that still goes to Phase 4. It is by far the best and worst of the MCU we have ever seen. So with all of that out of the way, what did you guys think of Phase 5? Are you in the same boat as me? Did you love it? Or did you outright hate it? Let me know in those comments down below. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future videos. But until next time, take care.